are you ready to do for the love of your life? You might even think this sounds too pathetic because I am only 18, but I have already made a decision that I am ready to sacrifice a lot. I've sacrificed both my looks and my health for the one I love. My name is Kimberly, and I will tell you a story about how I almost died, while all I really wanted was to get the attention of one guy. I think I'll start my story with something that happened to me more than once. It might explain some of my features, which otherwise might make my story unbelievable, or at least confuse you. So, I was on the outskirts of the city looking for a salon that would suit me. My family lives in a wealthy area, and in theory, I could have asked my parents for money to go to a salon downtown, or at least to a good one near my home. But this had absolutely nothing to do with money. I kept this thought in my head to keep myself calm while I was wandering through these narrow streets that I'd never been on, looking for the one I needed. It was about 3 in the afternoon, but I still felt very uncomfortable in this part of the city. There were very few people around, and those who were passing by, who nevertheless came across my path, met me with attentive and guarded glances. Finally, following the instructions arrived from the navigator, I turned into one of the alleys and saw the door of my new salon. It was strange for me that for some reason the entrance was not facing the main street. I took a deep breath and went inside. But when I entered, I saw that it was not that bad. I was not completely sure that the salon was perfectly clean or that the woman who worked there sterilized her instruments regularly, but that did not bother me. I decided not to ask her extra questions so that she would not ask me extra questions in return. But when the hairdresser received a full description of how I wanted my hair colored and started to work, she still could not resist the temptation of asking me questions. A few minutes after the bleach was applied to my hair, I began to cough. My eyes turned red as if I had not slept for 3 days, and the skin on my neck began to turn a poisonous pink and got covered with a rash. The hairdresser asked me if I was allergic to certain substances, but I told her that everything was okay and that she could continue working. But after another 10 minutes, I felt worse. My neck began to itch terribly, and I started feeling like I was suffocating. My breathing became so noisy and heavy that the hairdresser got incredibly nervous and asked me about an allergy again. I did not answer. Then the woman got angry and kicked me out of her place, saying that she did not need any problems. She refused to take money from me or to complete her work. With a half-bleached head, I had no choice but to go home. Fortunately, my parents were not at home. Trying to breathe through a clean handkerchief, I sat down at my computer and ordered an online express delivery of some Asian hair dye. Yes, I was so desperate that I decided to finish the coloring myself, even if I was not a professional and the result would be far from perfect. I needed to keep my hair blonde, and I knew that it was not my day and that any other salon would kick me out just like that woman had. The hair dye arrived quickly, so I locked myself in the bathroom, and struggling with tears in my eyes, coughing, a stuffy nose, and the terror that I experienced thinking about suffocation, I somehow dyed my hair. By the end of the procedure, I was half conscious, and the only thing that helped me to get myself back in one place was a handful of antihistamine pills. But I needed to go through all this torture to keep myself blonde. It's just that, well, my boyfriend prefers blondes, and I really love him. I bet that now you consider me a complete fool, but you just don't understand how I've felt about this guy my whole life. His name is Terrence, and our families are duplex neighbors, so I've known Terrence from my early childhood. While I was a child, I was not in love with him, but he was interesting to me, and I wanted to be friends with him. I loved to watch Terrence play. His games looked like lots of fun. But Terrence did not want to be friends with a girl. At the same time, he was always ready to help. He even became my hero. My little kitten climbed onto the upper branches of a tree in our yard and could not get down. She meowed and was very frightened. I could literally hear how scared she was. But I did not know how to help her. None of the adults were at home, but Terrence was in the courtyard. He managed to climb the tree and carefully brought my kitty back to me. And when he passed her into my hands, that was the moment when Terrace won my heart. I had fallen in love. I carried this feeling through my whole childhood, and when we became adults, it was still with me. For all this time, I could never find the right moment to tell Terrence about my feelings, even when I saw he had started dating other girls. Yes, Terrence did not spare my feelings, but how could he? He knew nothing about them. One day, when he and I were chatting about everything, he confessed to me that he liked blondes. I began to look closely at his girlfriends, and they really were all blondes. Then I realized I had two serious problems in my life. The first problem, I was a brunette with very thick hair. I did not look like a blonde at all, and it was difficult for me to dye my hair. The second problem, I was allergic. Any cosmetics, except for completely natural ones, caused a severe allergic reaction in me. Even though I knew this very well, I went to a hair colorist as soon as I had an opportunity. I needed to bleach my hair. But hairdressers would immediately realize that I was allergic because everything would happen as I've already described to you. It made me feel terrible. But somehow I went through a few dyeing sessions. But every time, as soon as I paid for the services, the hairdresser would tell me to get out and never come back. They said they did not want problems, even though I seemed to not care about my health. Nevertheless, the results were beyond my expectations. Who could have thought that blonde hair would suit me so well? Now I liked what I saw in the mirror and was sure that Terrence would sooner or later notice me. But I soon discovered that the rash that covered my skin after I applied the bleach was not the worst that was to come. My skin was now covered with tiny ulcers. It was very painful, and I did not know how to properly treat them. I could not touch my head at all. I wanted to scream from every touch. I could hardly hold back my tears from the pain. It was only thinking about Terrence that gave me the strength to do my hair, put on some makeup, dress in beautiful clothes that hid my injured skin as much as possible, and make a move toward my destiny. I knew where Terrence would be hanging out that day, and I decided to surprise him. And I succeeded. Terrence was pleasantly surprised by my new look and finally started to behave as if he saw a woman in me. He was alone at this time, so nothing bothered us. We went for a walk together, and later on in the evening, we went back home together. Terrence and I were neighbors, so in fact, there was nothing extraordinary about this. But this time, our evening together was more like a date, and Terrence seemed to be walking me home as his girlfriend, not his friend. In front of my door, he kissed me. I was happy. It was a real victory for me. But when my boyfriend put his hand on my shoulders, I almost screamed. Terrence gently ran his hand through my hair, and I felt like he was picking my open wound with a fork. Now the third problem added to the first two. I finally got the guy I had been dreaming of all my life. But now I had to somehow hide from him how I felt when he touched me. My hair grew fast, so I had to bleach it often. This left my wounds no time to properly heal. I managed to hide the other symptoms by taking pills, but I could do nothing about the reactions on my skin. Terrence and I were a couple, but I had to always make up some stupid excuses to avoid being alone with him so that he would not touch me. It was very sad, because that was the exact opposite of what I wanted. But this was not the end of my troubles. I found out that the only hair dye which I had, more or less, adapted to, with a little help from some pills, of course, made me lose hair. I was ready to endure the pain, but this was too much. I liked being a blonde. I would be happy to be a brunette again, but being bald? I had to urgently find a new hair dye and reorder it online. But this new bleach was a killer. I stayed home alone, as I have always done when I needed to dye my hair. But as soon as I put the hair dye on my hair, I began to choke like never before. My pills didn't help me either. I felt my neck swelling and blocking my airways. I fell to the floor and only managed to send a text saying, "At home. Help." This text combo was with Terrence. He was at home when he received this frightening message and immediately ran to me. The front door was closed, so Terrence had to knock out a window to find me on the bathroom floor. However, my hero saved me again. Terrence called the doctors, and I woke up in the hospital. There, I had to tell everything to him and to my parents, who had no idea of the consequences of my drastic image change. Terrence was shocked by my confession, but not in the way I thought. He made me promise him that I would never dye my hair again, and in turn, he promised me that he would never leave me because he once liked blonde girls. Then I felt really stupid about everything that happened. But at the same time, I was happy